Get going here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday, March 8th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission in Brentwood. If you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, next item of business, we will call the roll. Mr. Moran, if you could, please.
Chairman, Matt Foreman.
Here.
Mark Professor's not here. Carl Carlin.
Here.
Jeff Hunt.
Here.
Jeff Moore.
Here.
John Ritter not here. Lisa Sharing not here. Hart Nelson.
Here.
Sherry Bilderbeck.
Here.
John Nemberger. No. Paul Moran, yes. Lisa Sharing. Here. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Next item of business, the agenda has been distributed. Do I have a motion, or actually, can we approve by acclamation the agenda, or are there any changes or corrections that need to be made? Seeing none, any objections to approving the agenda by acclamation, the agenda will be approved. Next item of business, the minutes from our February 8th, 2023 meeting have been distributed. Are there any changes or alterations needed? Seeing none, any objection to approval of the minutes by acclamation? Ms. Bilderback, I'm going to make sure to look up as well. Seeing none, the minutes from our February 8th meeting are approved. Next item of business, citizen comments. Seeing no, actually, well, online, we have no members of the public. So I would imagine, Jessica, we don't have any members of the public wishing to address us on items not on the agenda for the evening. Moving on. Next item of business is old business. This is P&Z 22026. This is the text amendment regarding fence regulations of the city of Brentwood. We have seen this. I think this is probably the fourth time since we have been making changes and iterations along the way. But just briefly, over to Ms. Kelly for staff report, please.
Yes. I'm going to do a share screen. Okay. So based upon the prior discussion, I wanted to reorganize and eliminate any duplicative regulations that would be under the building code to kind of simplify everything. Therefore, we moved up the section that says that any fence, screen, wall, or exterior partition would require a permit. And we renamed the whole section as fences, walls, and screening devices. The big discussion on fences within the front yard, we have allowed for up to 4 feet as long as it's 50% open, and that can be at the property line. And since that was what was allowed at a shorter height before, I just allowed for that to carry around to both corner and double fronted lots. Anything beyond that would require going to the Board of Adjustment for approval. You can see here I removed anything that, crossbars, that's generally handled as building code and property maintenance, that it be maintained. So I didn't feel like it was needed in this section. I did add, similar to Maryland Heights, I did add that if there's a perimeter solid fence, then the use of wire chain link may be used interior for like gardening purposes or to have a animal enclosure, which nobody would see because it's screened elsewhere. So I did include that as a allowance. That was a discussion that we had at a previous meeting. We also renamed, this is for special fences that aren't generally required. So under section 400, what was 2410 is now 2420. We renamed it because this is the section that's actually required under commercial properties when you're screened from adjacent residential. So we wanted to make that more clear in the title, which is required screening and buffers for in commercial property. And then we just struck out some of the other duplicative language as well. So that's how I've reorganized this as a section based upon the discussion, and I'm looking for y'all's direction and whether we feel this is appropriate to move forward for the Board of Aldermen.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Any other, or any questions for members of the commission for staff? Talking about this for a bit. Then do I have a motion?
Oh,
Sorry.
Sherry had a
Oh,
question.
my apologies. Keep telling me to look up. Ms. Bilderback.
Thank you very much. I just had a question. I remembered at the last meeting, at least I think we had talked about something on the ornamental. We use the word ornamental when it relates to the front yard and we're increasing the height. But I think we had talked about something as far as like, how can we define that maybe a little bit?
Oh, yes, I did forget about that. I generally think that ornamental is just 50% open and more decorative style. But I can look at adding a particular definition, if you want to make that a condition of approval, or we can look at adding it here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if we came up with something now, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we don't need to take it to another meeting. Like,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be elaborate, but we had talked about something to give folks guidance, a little
Yeah.
bit more guidance as far as what it was. And then of course, they've got their way that they can appeal it if they want something else, I guess. But
Yeah, I generally feel ornamental fences is like 50% open, like a wood picket fence, or the more ornament. I keep saying ornamental because
like the wrought iron decorative,
yeah,
that kind of thing. And I
right,
don't think we use the word, I mean, we took out the word aesthetics, right? For
right,
the primary purpose of aesthetics. We took that out.
correct.
It just seems to me like ornamental and the gap between pickets, like it should have something a little bit more than that. I mean, because it's really subjective what's ornamental. I mean, not to lock people in. This is kind of like our conversation last time. We didn't want to make it
Right.
too limiting, but we wanted to give like a little bit more.
So what it does say is ornamental fence shall not exceed 48 inches in height, including, hold on, let me do a screen share so everybody can see this. So it's number one, such ornamental fences shall not exceed 48 inches in height, and including the height of columns and vertical support, and is at least 50% open of its surface, as viewed at any line perpendicular to the vertical plane of the fence and for the entire length of the fence. So when I just Googled ornamental fences, it just came up as like wrought iron decorative that's 50%, generally 50% open. This one up here, I would not consider an ornamental fence because it's pretty solid, but generally any open fence I think is viewed as general openness.
So you think the fact that the fence has that amount of openness will provide clarity and make that clear as far, I mean, they're not going to put in like a standard. I don't know. I mean, like, it wouldn't make sense to put in a standard fence that had the wider gaps in my mind, but you just never know what people are going to do when they see something.
Right. I mean, it wouldn't make, yeah. I mean, if they wanted to do more like a more open fence, I think that would still apply. I think the 50, as long as it's 50% open, is what I'm looking at.
Mr. Chairman.
And that's enough to make it ornamental.
Yeah.
I'd be interested, like, what other people think. I mean, I don't know if the word decorative should be in there.
Mr. Carlin, I
I
think
don't
you have some comments.
I think there is other guidance in the as written here. So number one, as stated, number 3 says wood posts, pickets, boards, and lumber shall be painted to be compatible with their surroundings. So that's a guideline. Columns and in vertical supports shall be set no closer than 6 feet. That's a guideline to give it some discipline. And then all exposed steel, or metal, I guess you could say, used in construction shall be preserved against rust and corrosion. So there is some additional guidance, I think, besides the, it sort of implies that wood and steel are okay, but they have to be treated in such a way that they look well. So I think maybe we do have it relatively covered. And then the last one, 6, says none of this, right? Then the last one, 6, says you can't do chain link. So I think maybe we are covered. I don't know what anyone else thinks about that.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin. Other members of the commission? And I would tend to agree. I think that I understand and I'm a big fan of definitions if we're going to say we're going to use that term. But I do think that with that directly following that we have that further explanation of what we mean. By this we mean, I think that that covers it. So I think, at least from my seat, I'm comfortable that we can make or that someone reviewing this can understand what we mean by ornamental fence. Ms. Bilderback,
And for
any
me,
other?
that's,
Yep, please.
yeah, I mean, for me, that's good enough. I just wanted to bring it up and because we talked about it for a while last meeting. So I just want to make sure that when we sat and thought about it, that we felt like we were comfortable that people really know what it means. I mean, we all know what it means, but it's like, I'll know it when I see it. So I just wanted to get other people's thoughts on it.
And I agree with that as well. Yeah.
I think, the thing that sticks out for me is especially number 3. Very clear. We want to be compatible with surroundings. That helps explain why ornamental. I think that's a very useful piece.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? I'm going to look up. I got to remember. All right, now, do I have a motion on the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval on the proposed draft text amendment as discussed today, March 8th, 2023, at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Motion by Ms. Schering. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Mr. Moran. Roll call vote, please.
Matt Foreman,
Yes.
Carl Carlin,
Yes.
Jeff Hunt,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Lisa Sharing,
Yes.
Yes. Oops, sorry.
Jerry Bilderbeck. Calm down.
Yes, I heard the S. I heard the S. Yes.
And Paul Moran, yes, that's unanimous, Mr. Chairman. It's passed.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. That text amendment will then be referred to the Board of Aldermen at their next regularly scheduled meeting, I would imagine.
Well, the public hearing is tentatively scheduled for April, the first meeting in April.
Okay, first meeting in April. Excellent.
Yeah.
Next item is new business. This first item is our P&Z 23003. This is a conditional use permit for Ally Personal Training Facility at 2533 South Brentwood Boulevard. This is within the tenant space as 2537 South Brentwood Boulevard. I believe that was where his Clockworks was, or the store there. I do believe, and folks have seen from the agenda, that we have a little bit of business still waiting for us, specifically around parking. And so staff and I believe the applicant has asked that we then hold this over to our next scheduled meeting. Is that my understanding correct, Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. And so we would then have a motion to continue the item to our April 12th meeting if the commission is in agreement or if we have a motion for that.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Carlin. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Mr. Moran. And just do a voice vote on that. All in favor of holding this or continuing this?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye.
Hi.
All opposed, same sign. All right, we will continue this item on our April 12th meeting. Next item of new business is P&Z 23005. This is a text amendment for revisions to section 400.1880, the Dark Sky Initiative Lighting Code. And staff report, please.
Excuse me. Sorry. So this has actually come out of the Sustainability and the Public Works Committee. They are recommending that the city lower the outdoor lighting to 2,700 kelvins in compliance with the International Dark Sky Association. The International Dark Sky Association, as you can see the chart here, this 2,700 kelvins is easier on the eyes and does not affect their circadian rhythm or other animal species, and allows for the dark sky, the stars in the sky, to show up more. So they're recommending at 2,700 kelvins, and you can see that the warmer shows a little lighter, where the higher light levels is very bright and shows a blue. So, it actually can decrease visibility if the light is behind and if someone's behind the light and it's directed towards you, it actually obscures that person. So it doesn't affect any safety measures. So they are proposing the 2,700 Kelvin. So, and we have the draft ordinance below. So.
Okay. All right, so just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, this was from the Sustainability Commission and then to the Public Works Committee, who then sent it to us. Is that correct? That's okay.
Correct.
All right. We will turn it over to members of the commission for questions to staff. Mr. Carlin? Oh, sorry.
So I had a question in the
Mr. Foreman.
description of the paragraph, the last 3 sentences. Conversely, the city also recognizes that, outdoor lighting applies to all new construction. Retrofits to existing outdoor are not required, period. However, light bulbs in existing outdoor lighting must be 2,700 degrees. They seem to contradict each other if we're not requiring retrofit, but then the next sentence says existing lighting must be required to be 2,700.
So let me make sure, and I had, I think, the same question. We're not requiring retrofitting of actual fixtures,
Right.
but the light bulbs within that fixture would be required to be 2,700 K or less, and then
Once
that would
they-
be an immediate, actually, I don't believe it's immediate. I believe it does say below that
Yeah.
those that are lawfully installed and operable on the effective date are exempt until they're replaced, i.e. until the light bulb runs out, and then you would require a new one.
Right.
Okay, and so it is that the fixture itself doesn't require to be retrofitted. The bulb would, once the existing bulb burns out.
Correct.
Okay, and then this applies to commercial and residential and public property.
Correct.
So it seems
think
predicated
it-
on the fact that the fixture,
It-
could
it-
actually
yeah.
buy a luminaire that would plug into that fixture at the proper temperature. Maybe I'm just pessimistic from dealing with lots of projects where it's like, oh, just switch out the light bulb and it's not available. I think Lisa has a comment.
I think there will be some. Ms. Sharing, sorry, any other questions, Mr. Foreman?
No, I'm just, if there's a way to clarify that, it seems like at first reading, it's a contradiction. And it could trigger having to replace the fixture if the bulbs aren't available.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Ms. Sharing?
Yeah, that was my question. I'm not a lighting specialist, but is it commonplace for a bulb with this Kelvin output to be available for common light fixtures? Do we know that? Or do we
I
think
do.
that this will
Yeah, I
prompt
do.
fixture
I'm sorry.
replacement?
No, I think that they are widely available. But I could confirm that and bring that back to you if you wish.
Mr. Yeah, we'll do the right-left thing. I know, actually, I think that's something Daming did, so, all right. Mr. Moran?
I just would want to observe that the only way we can ever get this passed is if Brentwood provides free 2,700 and below bulbs. Otherwise, I think it's going to be impossible to make this happen and enforce it.
I did, and if I could, I'm going to go back. I had a couple questions myself of, really taking a look at and understanding, as I was saying before this, I have a telescope. I enjoy it. I enjoy using it. So I actually understand some of the value of having a darker night sky. But I'm also trying to figure out exactly what problem we're solving here. I'm not sure that the arguments made that this doesn't have a public safety impact are convincing from the presentation given. And also think that that's something that, especially for homeowners or businesses, that they may be better positioned, or perhaps Brentwood PD might be better positioned to talk about that a little bit. I also had some questions about why Brentwood first. I did see that there was a list of other cities that are considering this, but I believe only Ellisville has passed it. So I'm trying to understand why we want to be the first involved in this effort. And also, to Mr. Moran's point, I think enforcement, if you're saying, well, you will only have to replace the bulb when it burns out, how are we actually going to know that? Are we going to literally go around and enforce code enforcement saying, well, I had this stash of them, but no, it really was there the whole time? It seems a little invasive to me, and also as cost. And I think, as other folks have mentioned that before, of do 2,700K lights cost more? Are there cheaper versions that people wish to use? And are we basically placing additional costs on homeowners? So I've got some concerns about this effort. My apologies, Mr. Carlin.
No reason. Thank you. I actually am kind of personally excited to see this in draft form language because I for many years have been really concerned about the very high temperature Kelvin streetlights that have been put in, certainly on my street. And before I was a member of this commission, I was going to take it up with the alderman because they're really unpleasant. And so I have a pretty strong feeling that, and this is anecdotal, this is not science. So but I think it could be a positive thing for property values to have a nice color of light on the street. Because frankly, like we were talking earlier, it feels like a surgery suite on my street with those, so that's not pleasant. It's not good. So some of the concerns you raised, Chairman, I also agree with. I think, maybe it's possible for the residential side to have a recommendation instead of a binding. You can say, we recommend you use these lights. Here's the reason why, and it's not compulsory because, again, I'm enforcement. I'm not quite sure how that's done. Certainly, where this board is concerned, commercial and public property, we have more of a say. And so I think we could lead by example as opposed, carrot instead of stick. But I know whether, regardless of what happens here, I'm going to talk to my alderman about those lights because they're truly offensive. Like they're just too cold, So, and then from there, I think Whitney, others we could talk about: is it 27? Is it 3,000? You could nibble about the numbers, but I think there is an advantage to this, both from the quality of the light, this experience you have. I think people may not understand this. They would feel it if they don't understand it mentally. They would feel it, when they walk on their streets because it's too bright sometimes. So anyway, I'm in favor of it. Maybe not this exact language, but I think we should continue studying it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlin. And I actually think that the idea of if the city, especially with streetlights, and I do believe I read in here that Ameren will be willing to follow ordinances. So if the streetlights the ordinance says that they're at 2,700 K or below, then Ameren will follow that recommendation or that ordinance. They would have to. And I think that may be a pilot project, for example, or something. So that may be something to consider. Mr. Hunt, I think that you had some comments.
Yeah. Excuse me. I would like to understand what impact, especially in a commercial setting, this would have on existing infrastructure and private infrastructure. So, if you change the number of Kelvin in each fixture, how does that affect foot candles on the ground? How does that affect, other things on site, that whether they're requirements or whether they'll put additional burdens on the community and the businesses in the community to provide additional poles or modify their existing structures, what that looks like. And I didn't see anything in here on that.
Now, I know Ms. Bilderback and I have, and all of you have reviewed a lot of those lighting diagrams, and so I would imagine that there's some questions. Ms. Bilderback, I'm looking up finally. Any questions?
Yay. Okay. Thank you very much. All of the comments with the potential concerns, I have those. The crime thing, I mean, I would want a whole lot more on that. And the impact, I mean, that's huge. And we're encouraged by the police, the Brentwood PD, to light up everything, everything that you read on Facebook, on like group pages like related to Brentwood, of just citizens talking about it, are like, put a light on your front, put a light on the side of your house, a motion light, put a light on your back, put a light on your garage. I've got a light in front of my garage and back of my garage, on my front porch, on my back porch. I've got a gradeway light. One or two of them are sodium lights, which are extremely expensive, and the fixtures also can be expensive. And I don't know if you can actually get certain kinds of lights for these fixtures. The same thing somebody else was talking about, that you might have to get a new fixture, and that gets really expensive. And then also, like, buying lights ahead of time. I've got all sorts of light bulbs that I bought ahead of time that are in my house, so like I'm never without one. I wouldn't want to see this apply at all to residential properties. I have a real concern about it applying to commercial properties, especially with safety issues and some of the other issues that folks mentioned. They also are more expensive. Like, some of these newer light bulbs are a lot more expensive than the old ones used to be. Now, there's the argument that, well, maybe it's cheaper to run it like over time, or this, that, or the other. But if you're having to get more fixtures, or you're having to change them and do all this stuff because you can't find the right light bulb for it, there's problems with that. And And then the crime issue related to making commercial property safe as far as carjackings, parking lots, that is a huge concern. And it's a massive problem that we're having, not just in Brentwood, but in all of the core communities that run along the interstate as an issue. So those are some of the concerns that I would have. I love the stars. I've been geeked out on astronomy since I was a little kid, and I totally get it. I do go to the farm to get like that fix, but that would be a concern to me. Now, as far as if it was shown not to be, and it was demonstrated with like actual facts, real studies, the input of our police department, that just speaking about our street lights, that if we changed our street lights and the bulbs to be something different, I wouldn't have as much problem with that as long as it was really well documented about the crime issues, because we've had tons of crime issues, and we also want the Ring cameras and all the different types of cameras that folks have bought and invested in to be able to catch video that they can share with the police. And you can only do that if you can see who's on the video. So the lighting becomes really important. So those are some of the things that you guys have all said. So I'm kind of repeating it, but I just feel like it's really important. And like Mr. Nelson, our chairman, said, I mean, there's been so many commercial properties and developments that we've had go through here, and we've required certain kind of light fixtures on Manchester Road and through that corridor. We have a certain kind of light fixture that we've told people to buy. And I think that we would have a lot of work to do to figure out if it was feasible, if it was economic, if it was safe. But I really see it being completely untenable, unrealistic, and unenforceable to do it and required of residential properties. And I still see a major problem with commercial. So that's my 2 cents. If you're going to do something, someone said a pilot program with street lights on a street and see how it works out, that would be okay to me. But that's my 2 cents. Just because it sounds good on paper doesn't mean that it's a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Bilderbeck. Any other questions? I think that I can safely summarize that the commission has some concerns about this as proposed. I do believe that there may be some value, and again, I also want to recognize this has gone through the Sustainability Commission. It has gone through Public Works, right? So there has been some discussion about this with some of the elected leadership within Brentwood, and want to make sure that but it has come to us now, and I think that we need to make sure that we have the information. So I do believe that having some information on what is the interest in a potential pilot, or the other things I heard, again, public safety, or for us, as mentioned, since we do in fact provide guidance for lighting, light in terms of spillage, in terms of, as you said, the candle wattage on the ground. I think that it's useful to see how is that going to impact, for example, a parking lot that we may have already approved, right? Is that, to your point, I believe, Mr. Hunt, of, are they going to have to put up more poles because when they use a 2700 Kelvin that they're not able to provide their lighting on the ground that they need to. And so I think that just having a little more clarity on these will be helpful if staff is able to provide that, and we want to carry that forward. With that, so we do not have a motion to move this forward. My question, I guess, for this group is, do we want to have a motion to basically to table it pending further information from staff? Is that the will of the group? All right, motion to that effect, if you wouldn't mind.
Continue the discussion of the text amendment to the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on April 12th at 6:30 for additional review and discussion. So anything you can do to shine more light on this, please, Whitney, would be appreciated.
He's been saving
sorry,
that.
I'm
He's been
sorry.
saving that for months. Motion by Mr. Moran. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Hunt. And we'll just do a voice vote on that since we're carrying it over. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion will be carried over. That is all of the old business and new business. Aldermanic report, seeing no alderman. Director's report. Ms. Kelly, if you have any voice left.
Yeah. So we will have these 2 items, Alloy Personal Fitness Facility, and the lighting will come back on the April 12th. And we have a couple of more items as well that will be under new business. So mark your calendars and we will send out the agenda as regular. Yeah.
All right. We hope you feel better. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Bilderbeck, second by Mr. Moran. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I got to use it.